My name is Rev Donna Maurer, and I'm the spiritual leader of the Sonoran Desert Center for Spiritual Living in Amado, Arizona. And I'm here on YouTube with our music director, Heather O'Day, and Ruth Bennett, who is our practitioner of the day. We thank you for sharing your time with us, and Heather will ring the bells that open our service.
Let's begin our service this morning with some bells in celebration.
Welcome. We are so glad you are joining us today and on your own schedule, whatever day that might be. I encourage you to settle into your seat, take a deep breath, and open your heart and mind to Reverend Donna's message as I give our invocation. Every breath we take centers us to that love, wholeness, abundance, and joy that is the truth of who we are. Anytime we feel distant from God, a deep breath allows us to acknowledge that permanent connection, that connection that is always there. God is always available to us. God is forever in us, as us, and through us. So as this service begins, take a deep breath, open your heart and your minds, and know that we are always connected. And so it is.
Thank you, Ruth. Now, last week we did the first verse of a song called Who You Really Are. And let's work on verse 2 today. Well, I know who you really are. I see it in your eyes. Oh, you are a shining star. I know who you really are. Well, I know who you're here to be. I see it in your eyes, a light for the world to see. I know who you're here to be. You are incredible, so unforgettable, the one that everyone's eyeing. You are an awesome friend, and so magnificent, then there is just no denying. Well, I know who you really are. I see it in your eyes. Oh, you are a shining star. I know who you really are. Well, I know who you're here to be. I see it in your eyes, a light for the world to see. I know who you're here to be. I know who you're here to be.
We're continuing our sandbox wisdom because there's something so charming about the way children look at the world. As a matter of fact, this past week, I was channel surfing and stopped on a young pregnant mother who was about to have an ultrasound and trying to explain the procedure to her very young daughter. She said, "The doctor will be able to look into my stomach and see the baby." And the little girl exclaimed, "You ate the baby?" I hope you're laughing as much as I was when I heard that, because whatever depression I might have been experiencing was completely obliterated by the words of that little girl. Well, our topic this morning is a quote from another of Cynthia Copeland Lewis's children. The key is usually under the mat. This statement from a young child shows that he is observant, but there's also common sense and logical thinking when we assume there is a key under the mat. If you or I are trying to get into a locked house, wouldn't we have the common sense to look for a key under the mat before we broke a window or door? Wouldn't we think about where a key might logically be hidden before we destroyed property in order to get inside? And if the statement is coming from a small child, we must assume that the child is observant, quick to notice things. He's watched someone retrieve a key from under the mat. It's obvious that the child has stored and remembered what he's observed. And we know that he came to a logical conclusion using his wisdom and his intelligence. So I'm going to use some of the principles that we find from this simple statement, the key is usually under the mat. And let's start with common sense. You know, many of us have left other religions for this one. And I think what we find here in the science of mind philosophy is a spiritual path that is filled with common sense. You know, as I've mentioned before, I grew up in the Midwest in Missouri. My parents, grandparents, aunts, and uncles all lived within a half hour of each other. I went to the same high school that my parents did, and even had several of the same teachers. So to say that we led a sheltered life is a bit of an understatement. But I always felt like the black sheep. I wanted to go places and see things. And I was always more daring than my sisters. So in the late 1960s, when I had just turned 20, I decided to move to Los Angeles. And it wasn't long after my move that I found the science of mind and began attending Founders Church. So when I called my parents and told them that I had found religion, of course they knew I had flipped. They imagined me on the street corners of Los Angeles in an orange sari singing Hare Krishna. So in order to calm their apprehensions, I sent my mother a book that our minister, Dr. William Hornaday, had written. It's called Your Aladdin's Lamp. And in it are uplifting stories, stories of changed lives through changed thinking, stories of the miracles of prayer. And all the stories are true. My mother actually read the book and wrote me the most beautiful letter. In it, she said, "This is how I have always believed. I just didn't know there were others out there that think like me. It is so full of just plain common sense. And I think that's what's missing in religion." Years ago, I went to hear the actress Della Reese, who was talking about finding the religion of her dream when she found the Church of Truth and its minister, Dr. Johnny Coleman, who taught the same basic ideas that we do. In fact, Della became an ordained minister and had a successful church in Los Angeles. But she said, the churches I grew up in didn't make sense to me. I was thrown out of these other churches because I asked too many questions. They told me I was born in the image and likeness of God. Then they told me I was born in sin and was a wretch. So I asked, does that make God a sinner and a wretch? And they sent me back to my mama. They told me with God, all things are possible. And when I shared my dreams, they said, you can't do that. No black person, especially a woman, has ever done that. And I asked, if all things are possible with God, why can't I follow my dreams? And they sent me back to my mama. You know, today, most of us are seeking a deeper understanding of our spirituality rather than a church experience. And this deeper understanding needs to make sense to us. We don't want a religion that is conflicting in its belief. We don't want a religion that tells us we are made in the image and likeness of God and say we are born in sin. We don't want to hear with God all things are possible, followed by a litany of why they are not. We want a religion of philosophy that is logical, that is practical, that is filled with common sense. We want the key to be under the mat in a logical place and easy to find. We want to be able to observe, understand, and use the principles of this philosophy to live well, to love fully, and to be all that we can be. So we begin with the premise that God is infinite intelligence, divine presence that is both transcendent and immanent. Transcendent, meaning that God has no boundaries, it is everywhere present, and immanent, meaning it is infinitely personal to each of us. We believe that we access this divine intelligence through our mind, which is our use of the one mind of God. So the key is truly at our doorstep, and it's through our thoughts, ideas, and beliefs that we manifest the experiences of our life. And to me, that is common sense. If the aspects of God are love, truth, beauty, joy, harmony, peace, abundance, then these are our inherent attributes, and they will manifest in our life as we identify with them and as we embody them. Remember, we said that the child who made our statement, the key is usually under the mat, had to be observant, quick to notice things. Our spiritual path requires that we too are observant. We need to be observant of our own inner dialogue. We need to be quick to notice if we are putting the qualities of God first, or are we coming from less than loving spaces? In A Deep Breath of Life, Alan Cohen writes, the Hawaiian spiritual tradition teaches that every child born into this world is like a bowl of light containing the radiance of heaven. If rocks are placed into the bowl, the light of original innocence is hidden. Fear, guilt, and unworthiness are some of the stones that mask our true brilliance. The more rocks in our bowl, the less light we shine. Angry, nasty, or irksome people have lots of rocks in their bowls, while radiant, happy, and joyful people have few. What rocks are in your bowl? Begin to notice the beliefs and attitudes you hold that stand between you and the light you are. The next thing we said about our little boy who stated the key is usually under the mat is that he has stored and remembered what he witnessed. In other words, this experience has become part of his memory bank, which he can access. You and I, as human beings having a spiritual experience, have the most amazing capacity through our subjective mind to not only remember past experiences, but to change the thought and beliefs that are part of the experiences. We can access those memories that serve us and help us live more loving and more creative lives. And we can change those thoughts that would keep us from living abundantly, creating a new cause that produces the experience that we do want. In A Return to Love, Marianne Williamson writes, years ago, I told myself not to worry about a devil. I remember thinking that there is no force of evil stalking the planet. That, I told myself, is all in my head. Then I realized this is not good news. Since every thought creates experience, there is no worse place than it could possibly be. And while I agree with her, I also believe, as she does, that this is also the best place it could possibly be. Because if I am the creator, then I have within me the power to change my thinking and therefore change my life. So if you and I are wrestling with old beliefs and past memories, we might stop and ask ourselves, how may I perceive this situation differently? How do I think differently? Once there was a big semi-truck that became so wedged under an overpass that it could move neither forward nor backward. It created a huge traffic jam, and people came out of their cars to assess the situation and look for an answer. Everyone was looking at the top of the truck where it was jammed in its fixed position. Finally, one little boy, who had a very different perspective, said, "Why don't you let some air out of the tires?" Well, that's exactly what they did, and the truck went easily on its way. Sometimes when we get so focused on the problem, it helps to pull back and perceive it differently. The little boy, because of his size, had a different perspective than the taller adults. And you and I have the capacity to view situations from more than one angle. And when we bring a loving, compassionate attitude to any problem, we find that its resolution comes easily, almost like magic in some cases. So like the child, we can use the unlimited storehouse of our subjective to access those ideas that we have established in our memory, or we can create new and better ones as we ask ourselves, how can I perceive this differently? What are the rocks that are blocking my light? When the little boy said the key is usually under the mat, he used his powers of observation and his ability to remember in order to come to a logical and intelligent conclusion. Our spiritual path should not only be logical, but it should come to intelligent and satisfying conclusions. We need to be assured of the value of our path. We need to have those experiences that tell us intuitively that we are on the right path. If we spend a little time in meditation and spiritual contemplation, we open the doors to the intuitive guidance of our spirit within. As we follow this intuitive guidance, we automatically call forth the best from any experience because we are using the very intelligence of God flowing through us. Our founder, Dr. Ernest Holmes, tells us the one who uses the science of mind is a practical idealist, but not a dreamer. Well, there is, in the innermost recesses of our soul, a place which dwells in eternal stillness and inaction. There is also a place at the circumference of our being, which, animated by the inner spirit, goes forth to accomplish. Thus, can contemplation become fruition and inner recognition outer realization. When our thinking is in alignment with our God self, then we automatically embody the attributes of God. We have the key. Let's use it to fill our thoughts with love, joy, beauty, harmony, and peace. And let's watch as those thoughts become our experiences and our life is fulfilled, blessed, and sacred. Namaste.
Standing in the middle of a miracle, standing in the middle of a miracle, standing in the middle of a miracle right now. Funny how it happens when your heart is full. Anything and everything is possible. Standing in the middle of a miracle right now. I have walked through the desert. I have cried through the night. Spent my life wearing blinders. Could not see the light. Then one day I surrendered, and I fell to my knees. Heard a whisper, there's magic in everything you see. And we're standing in the middle of a miracle, standing in the middle of a miracle, standing in the middle of a miracle right now. Funny how it happens when your heart is full, anything and everything is possible, standing in the middle of a miracle right now. I ain't pleading like I'm a pauper, when in fact our lives are rich. It's like sitting in the darkness, not knowing there's a switch. And we're standing in the middle of a miracle, standing in the middle of a miracle, standing in the middle of a miracle right now. Funny how it happens when your heart is full, anything and everything is possible, standing in the middle of a miracle right now. This sacred journey from life to death, this very moment, this very breath, and we're standing in the middle of a miracle, standing in the middle of a miracle, standing in the middle of a miracle right now. Funny when it happens when your heart is full, anything and everything is possible. We're standing in the middle of a miracle right now. We're standing in the middle of a miracle right now. That was a song called Standing in the Middle of a Miracle by Stogood. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today. We would like to continue our messages with you and would greatly appreciate your financial support. Please visit our website, cslaz.org, and click on the donate button. And we certainly thank you so very much for your consideration. And now I turn our service over to Ruth for our closing affirmative prayer.
As we close this service, I'd like to remind us all of the words of our founder, Ernest Holmes. In Science of Mind, he writes, "One of the great difficulties in the new order of thought is that we are likely to indulge in too much theory and too little practice. We only know as much as we can prove by actual demonstration. So this week, this is my prayer for all of us. God is demonstrably present in everything we do. We have the opportunity every day to demonstrate all that God provides for us. We are the love, the joy, the abundance, the wholeness, and more that God is. So join me in thanksgiving for all we receive, knowing that these demonstrations are ours to the extent that we are willing to be open. So releasing anything that keeps us from our highest and greatest good, I close this service. Namaste."